In today's video, I wanted to share with you my first Code Blue experience as a nurse. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that my first code was not the one that I did the best in, and I had a lot of points that could be used as learning opportunities, so I wanted to share them with you. That way, when you are in your first code, you maybe avoid some of these mistakes that I made. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner, but years ago, for many years, I was a med-surg nurse and then a pediatric cardiology nurse, and I have unfortunately had my many codes. So I wanted to talk about the first code that I had as a nurse where I didn't have a preceptor or anything. I had some with preceptors, but those, obviously the preceptor kind of stepped in and did all the things. This is my first one that I had by myself when I was a baby nurse out in the world. So this code happened the third night that I was by myself, fresh off of orientation, and it was not my patient. So what had happened was it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and one of the other nurses on the unit came up to me and she said, "Hey, I'm gonna run down to the cafeteria really quick and grab some food. Could you hold my pager?" AKA cover for her patients. And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." Terrified. I mean, I was just petrified because I felt like my head was barely floating above the water. And here is mistake number one that I wish I could go back and change. I was drowning in my assignment because I was brand new. I wish I could go back and tell younger Liz, be like, no, just be honest and be like, girl, I am drowning. Like, is there anyone else you could ask? Because there's probably someone else that she could have asked. She wasn't trying to be mean. She probably had no idea that I just came off of orientation and was like, help me. And I was certainly not going out there being like, I'm drowning, please help me. Also a mistake, just ask for help, guys. You don't need to be a hero. But I said, yeah, sure, I'll hold your pager. My 5 already, I'm not panicked on the inside. Oh my gosh. This is also the first time I'd ever held anyone's pager. And I didn't ask her anything. I just said, took her pager, and she left. She went off the unit. She had no way to know what was happening up on the floor. I had in my back pocket a sheet of all the patients on the unit and their names. So I knew which patients were hers. And she kind of said like, I have bed 242, 36, whatever. They're there. And they're all fine. That was what she said. She's like, they're all fine. I was like, okay, perfect. I did not go and look at them. I did not go and check on them. I just said, okay, yep, fine. And that, my friends, was mistake number 2. You need to know at least a little bit about the patients that you are covering for. Have a little powwow. Every single time after that, we had powwows. Hey, these are my patients. Room 2 is, this is what their name is, this is what they're here for. You usually have like a master sheet that they give you that has everyone's name on it. Just write a few notes down like they're on 2 liters of oxygen, they're here for this, they're stable, they don't need anything. However, if they call out, they can get Tylenol if they need it. And just go down the list exactly like that. What are they here for? Things they may potentially need. Obviously, if someone's handing you their patients, hopefully they've been a decent human and like kind of done everything and all you need to do is babysit for a minute, but it's nice to give them a heads up of like, this is fine if they need this. Just know something about them. Not like younger Liz who was just like, oh, okay, sure, I'll hold your pager, goodbye into the wilderness. I literally have no idea who I'm now watching. So she leaves. She goes off the unit, which she is more than welcome to do as she had made sure her patients were taken care of and she gave them to me. It's been like 5 minutes. I'm sitting down. It's the first time I've sat down to chart, and I literally remember just pulling up the computer and being so annoyed because a call bell went off and it wasn't mine, it was one of her patients. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go into this room. And like, I just sat down to chart and I don't know this person. So I walked in and I was like, trying to be like, all like, hi, I'm Liz. Like, I'm one of the nurses on the unit. So-and-so just stepped off the unit, and he interrupts me. He's like, I don't feel well. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, let me look up. Like, I have no idea what this person's in here for. Like, it could be anything. I worked on med-surg. So I'm like gonna go into the computer and pull up and be like, can I offer you some Tylenol? And he's like, lady, I don't feel good. And like kept saying that. Here's my third mistake. He's sitting up in bed, leaning over on the table, like the pull-up table next to him, and he's leaning on it. Does not look well in retrospect. I didn't really look at him. I was looking at, oh, is he breathing okay on the monitor? And then I was so focused on pulling up on the computer, what can I do? Like, I don't know this person, that I missed the fact that he's sitting there showing me all the signs that terrible things are literally about to happen. He is losing his color. He is looking panicked. He is gasping. Didn't see that because baby nurse Liz was so task oriented that she didn't look at the picture. So there's the next lesson. Look at the human. Yes, check the monitor, make sure like nothing wild is happening. But if someone is telling you, I am not well, I do not feel good, something is happening to me, I promise you, having seen a lot of these now, something is happening. Even if they're not coding, something not good is happening to them. And you need to listen to them and look and just stop for a minute and assess and just see. Okay, breathing, like airway, breathing, circulation here, okay, right? Are they breathing? How is their breathing? Are they labored in their breathing? How does their color look? Oh, their color really doesn't look that good. Are they sitting there like this, like looking at you like this? Or are they sitting there like, I don't feel good. Like I got some pain. Like, you know what I mean? Like the kind where you're like, oh, I don't feel good. I need pain. I don't feel good. There's a big difference there. Look at your person and kind of get a scope of what's going on. Because if I had looked at him and really looked for like a second, I would have just called a staff assist because he really did not look well. Anyway, I'm looking at the computer and I look over and I just hear thud. He has fallen over onto his exam table. I look over at him. He's like gone gray. Gray, not moving. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mr. So-and-so, we're gonna call him Mr. Jones. I was like, Mr. Jones, look up. Pulse ox is like rapidly going like a like diving. I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh. I realize kind of what's happening, but I'm also terrified. I do not want to hit the button. Mistake number, I don't even know what we're up to now. I was like, I know if I hit this button, all the people are going to come, and like, what if I'm making the wrong decision? What if I'm overreacting? I didn't want to hit the button. Just hit the button, friends. Doesn't matter what button at that point, just hit a button and get the people in there. If you then, like, even if you hit staff assist, someone else can come in and be like, I don't know if this is a code, and they'll hit it for you. So I just remember staring at him and I was petrified. I was like, I don't really know what to do here. I walked over to him, like tried to feel for a pulse, realized the way he was bent over, I couldn't really even assess that. And I was like, I'm gonna call a code because he's gray. He's obviously not breathing. Hit the code button. And then I kind of was trying to get him like sat back up and pushed back in bed, which the much better thing to do here would have been to clear the bed so that when people came to help me, I could have laid him back down. Or we could have repositioned him, however, rather than me like awkwardly trying to like scooch him over, but I was panicked and I didn't know what I was doing. So if someone is coded and they're not like laying down in their bed already, even if they are, like remove the stuff from their bed, like the pillow in between their legs or the one propping them up on their side. That way when people are there and you can quickly move them, you can't move someone who is 300 pounds by yourself. Like, but I was in a panic, so I didn't realize that. People came in the room very quickly. I worked in a teaching hospital, so it was a big hospital. So a lot of people came when you hit the code button. So I'd hit the button. I was struggling to get him back in bed rather than just clearing the bed off, like I said, which would have been kind of the better choice in that moment. Put him back. I literally tried to like scramble up on the bed once we got him situated and start CPR without a backboard, without the bed being like in the CPR mode, like flat and low, because I was so panicked. And that's all I remember is being up on the bed, trying to do CPR, and one of the other nurses coming up and they're like, Liz, he doesn't even have a backboard. Like, you have to put a backboard under him. So we put the backboard on and then everyone got there and it went much, much smoother because, you know, they have done this a lot. So we got the backboard under him and then everyone started working on, you know, like all the things. They're trying to get a line in him. They ended up giving him an IO. Anesthesia came and they had intubated him. The resident that came and was running the code then started asking me questions, and that's when that hit me for the first time. Like, I don't know this person. So I'm like whipping the paper. They're like, what is he here for? And I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what he's here for. Thank goodness one of the other nurses that was in the room had this patient the night before, and she was like, oh, he's here for a COPD exacerbation. And he's like, okay, what happened right before it? How did he present when this happened? And I was like, oh, he just said he didn't feel good. Again, not incredibly helpful because I didn't ask this nurse like anything about this person. Maybe they hadn't been doing well that day, but I have no idea because I didn't ask anything. And so I'm really no help here. I had never done CPR on a human. This was the first time ever doing that. It was just like, it's a really odd, not great feeling. It is just, oh, the sound and everything, it's not what you want. It was a lot. So I was honestly super useless here, other than being able to provide CPR, which is not useless, but that's all I could do. It was not the best situation because I didn't know anything. There was a lot of frustration related to that, which is very understandable on the provider and everyone else's end. They're like, we don't, like, what is happening here? The poor other nurse, while this is all happening, comes up from eating her lunch. It's like 25 minutes later, all of this is happening. So at that point, she was able to step back in and say like, oh my God, gosh. Give a little bit of the background. They had at that point, thank goodness, resuscitated him. He had a heartbeat, he was ventilated, and they were taking him to the ICU. So we both actually kind of like went, it was just, I mean, very thankfully he did fine, and he was actually back on our unit a few days later. But those were the biggest takeaway like points from that. So definitely go watch my tips for a first code, because I kind of outline how to be, you could be a little bit more helpful maybe, not make those mistakes. And then these were also good takeaways that I was like, well, won't do that again. But that was essentially the entire experience. Afterwards, we debriefed. We usually did debriefs as a unit of kind of like, what could we learn from this? And then just let people talk about it, because talking about things like codes is usually very therapeutic, because it's fairly traumatic, especially when it does not end well. It's very traumatic and it's a lot to deal with. So being able to talk about it with your peers is very, very helpful, just to talk it through. And yeah, ever since then, I have never let anyone leave me with their patients without like grilling them first, at least a little bit. And I recommend that you do the same. So it was definitely a learning experience. One other thing I took away from that was always help people in codes when their patients are in trouble, even if you're not involved in it, because I walked out of that and other people were like, hey, I gave so-and-so his 2 o'clock meds. I gave so-and-so, like she needed this, so I gave it to her. And I was like, oh wow, like that was so incredibly helpful. So that really instilled in me, obviously, like you want to be helpful as you can, obviously, whenever, but like really make sure that if you're not doing it, like someone else is kind of adopting that nurse's other patients, so that when they leave the code, their life is not in shambles, because that's going to affect you. You have to go back to work after you do this. And especially when it doesn't go well, it is so hard to then go back to your assignment and just carry on, especially because then you're probably going to get an admission. And it's just like, oh my God, oh my gosh, like that is a day. So that is my first experience with a code. If you guys want to see more story times like this, let me know of other ideas for ones. I really can't think of any other story time ideas, but if you like these type of videos and you want to see more, consider subscribing. Leave me any ideas down in the comments. Tell me about your first code experience or any tips you have for them. I would love to hear about them. Like I said, it's kind of therapeutic to talk them through, and I'm more than happy to share other story times with you. I just don't know any topics. So leave them down below. Hope you learned a little bit of something and or just got to relate to a story. Hope you have a fabulous rest of your week with absolutely no codes and everything goes swimmingly, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.